Hey, hey.
Tobago updates. Good morning, Tobago.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Well, viewers, it is World Press Freedom Day, and part of the press is being able to express yourself in the format of books. And we have on set with us the Tobago Writers Guild as they get set to prepare for another book launch by the mayor of Port of Spain, Mr. Louis Lee Singh, who was also on set with us. Well, he's online with us, and it's about his book, Closer to the Church. And also joining me is Mr. Leroy George from the Tobago Writers Guild. Good morning and welcome to you.
Good morning, Candice.
And to you, Mr. Lee Singh.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Good morning to you.
Such a pleasure to have you both on with us this morning. So I want to get started with you, Mr. Lee Singh, to give us an idea about your book, Closer to the Church. It has a very interesting title. And I know we are all curious to know, what's the inspiration behind this book and what is it about? So, the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, let me correct one thing. I'm not the sitting mayor. I was mayor during the period 2010 to 2014, early 2014. But this is by way of correction. But more to the point, Closer to the Church, it's my third book, but my first novel. And I'm sure viewers would be familiar with the term closer to the church. You heard the old people say it a lot. The ending of that statement was further from God. And so the book really is an interesting little novel that came into my head during the pre-COVID period and then into COVID. And I penned this book, which essentially talks about religion and the misdeeds of the clerics and clergy, not only in, and I don't want people to believe it's only about Catholicism or Christianity, but it embraces Islam and Hinduism and the other religions. And it's not only locally focused, but it touches on other issues worldwide. The book really essentially is about a young man who hails from a place called Las Bajo, and he comes together with a lady who comes from the wealthy suburb of Goodwood Park, but she marries a Muslim man after knowing him for 2 weeks, and she goes to live in East Port of Spain in a place called Rose Hill. These two people get together to host a conference, which later becomes an international conference of the ungodly here in Port of Spain, Trinidad. And so the book takes us along that journey. The conference is successful. And the reality is that they may have entered the conference as nobodies, unknowns, people who had only an idea. But by the time the conference was over, they became speakers in demand across the world on this particular subject. They hosted a very successful conference here in Port of Spain. So the book, in my view, I have chosen to write about Trinidad in everything that I write about. I've chosen to illustrate how sweet Trinidad could be, but how sour and how bitter it can be. I've chosen to, as it were, if I'm, for example, in one part of the book, I'm speaking about coffee, and I can't help but focus on Hong Wing coffee because it's a coffee I grew up on.
Yes.
That's the nature of the book. It's a book that holds you from, if I dare say so myself, holds you at the edge of your seat and encourages you to read once you've opened the pages.
And you chose an interesting theme, focusing a little bit on religion, cross religion in a way, because we're such a multicultural, multi-religious society. Is that where you drew the inspiration from?
Well, as I said to you, I've chosen to write about Trinidad. I currently have another book which is before the publishers. The title of the book is Between the Bank and the Gutter. It's a novel about street dwellers in Port of Spain. And who knows about street dwellers better in Port of Spain, better than the mayor of Port of Spain, the former mayor of Port of Spain? So I believe Trinidad is a place that offers writers tremendous opportunity if they have observing eyes and minds. And I have sought to drive that agenda, because I think if somebody's reading my book, and it is in fact on Amazon and on Kindle, as well as in bookstores across London, if people are reading the book, they would get to know about Trinidad and may just be curious enough to want to come here and experience some of what I have written. You know, and I have used all the terms. I've not changed the language to meet an international audience. When I speak about currents roles in the book, you must know what a currents role is. How else would you want to know what a currents role is if you don't come to Trinidad and Tobago and find out where the best currents rolls are manufactured and produced?
Nice. Now, Mr. George, I want you to speak from the perspective of the Tobago Writers Guild as to, you know, how important it is to support local authors like Mr. Lee Sing within our space.
Extremely important. This month is the month of May. It is the International Month of Mental Health Awareness. And a lot of people, they go to, as Mr. Lee Sing said, not just the church, but different houses of worship, different places where persons feel as though they could get a little bit closer to God. And oftentimes that's to deal with mental issues, be it mild or be it major. And so the conversation that will be taking place globally, I'm sure it's very similar to the conversation that will be taking place in Trinidad and Tobago. But because Tobago and Trinidad are so different in terms of race composition, creed composition, etc., I am really excited about this upcoming Thursday, 6:30, at the Anne Mitchell Gift Auditorium in the Scarborough Library, to see where this conversation is going to go, because it's a conversation that is happening more and more often in this age of information technology, where people are looking closer to the church. And when I say closer, taking a closer look at the church and asking themselves, what is the purpose of this? And when you look at the panelists, we have persons that in the Tobago space, definitely they are among the persons on the top of the list when you want to hear somebody's opinion on subjects like this. Like, for instance, you have, coming possibly with a legal perspective, Miss Deborah Moore McGinnis,
Yes.
right? One of the founders of the Tobago Writers Guild.
And a prolific writer herself.
And an extremely prolific writer, both fictional and factual. And also, not only is she one of the founders of the Writers Guild, she's also a director also. Also having a legal perspective, you know, when it comes to legalities. Why do people do this? Why do people do that? What makes this right? What makes that wrong? That's something I'm interested in hearing from Reginald Dumas, right? Former head of the public service, obviously. Just like the church is an institution, all the services that he would have been the head of are institutions that work towards ensuring that we have a better quality of life here in the Trinidad and Tobago space. And it's medical. A lot of this is mental. We have family practitioner, Dr. Denise Soyafat Anger. She's also going to be a part of that conversation. And even the moderator, she has a degree in psychology, Jewel Green George, the president of the Tobago Writers Guild. And so I'm listening to former Mayor Louis Lee Sing talk about his book, and to tell you the truth, I'm really anxious to get my hands on the book itself on Thursday, because it is going to be available for purchase. But I'm also anxious to get my hands on the sequel, because when he talks about how that ends with the persons who basically put together this conference to speak about the wrongs of the church and then is put on a pedestal.
Yes.
I could imagine My wife often says one thing she's not interested in is seeing that no religion becomes the new religion. And so I'm really looking forward to the sequel. I'm going to ask Mr. Louis Leasing one time if he hasn't thought about it. Please make a copy available to me immediately. And so we're really looking forward to this. 6:30 at the Anne Mitchell Gift Auditorium in the library.
Now, Mr. Leasing, what motivated you to work with the Tobago Writers Guild and to do a book launch in Tobago?
I think Tobago offers the best of us in the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. I make no bones about that. And I made this point already. I was at a meeting in Tobago not too long ago, and I made the point that when one counts per capita the population of Tobago as against the population of Trinidad, and one looks at the people who have risen, the cream that has risen to the top of the hierarchy of things and the order of things in Trinidad and Tobago, one recognizes how serious the people who come from Tobago are. And therefore, I was simply moved to be able to work with a writers guild and a book club. Now, there might be writers guilds and book clubs in Trinidad and Tobago, but they certainly do not reach out to new authors and new writers. I've also made the point, certainly when I launched the book for the earlier on about Trinidad, I made the point that the one thing that is diversifying itself for Trinidad and Tobago are writers. This thing about publishing is growing and growing. You can go to any bookstore, and I would guarantee you a guess that 90% of the books or more are by local authors. People are writing memoirs, people are writing biographies, people are writing fiction, people are writing factual, real stuff, and it's all there. And I always encourage people, instead of buying fragrances and ornaments and dust collectors for as gifts, let's start buying books and giving it to people as gifts. Because
100% agree with you.
the government is still taxing us on books. So instead of encouraging people to write, they are discouraging people to write, because after you pay the cost for publishing and all the costs associated with it, if you don't find a publisher, you still have to pay on VAT to bring your books into Trinidad. And therefore, and then you charge, and people are still charging VAT on books. My feeling is that if you don't charge VAT on books, the books could become much cheaper, and therefore many people would buy more books. Additionally, the point I'm trying to make is this, that we keep talking about diversifying our economy. But this whole thing about publishing, writing and publishing books is doing it without any assistance. More young people, many more people are writing of all ages, and it ought to be encouraged. There ought to be incentives. The state ought to open up some kind of facility to assist people, not to give anything, because the fact that we are doing it on our own, spending the hours sitting and writing, or take wherever we get napkins in a restaurant or on the street, you make your notes. These are the skills that no one can pay for, and therefore they ought to be encouraged.
That we're seeing an increase of writers, of authors, very good authors coming from both islands, from both Trinidad and Tobago. And a lot of them I would say the majority of them focusing on writing about things that we know, our culture, our beliefs, what it is to be a Trinidadian and a Tobagonian. But that's happening at the same time where, people are more interested in social media, especially the young people are more interested in social media and that sort of thing, and in some ways reading less. And I would like both of you, both Mr. George and both you, Mr. Leasing, to speak on that, just that sort of paradox that's happening. We're having this increase of local writers, but yet we have, a decrease in some ways of literacy among our young population.
Well, unless Mr. George wants to go. I'd like to take a crack at that.
Yes,
Right.
sure.
Let me say to you, it isn't that young people are reading any less, but it is what they're reading and how they're reading it, which in a sense tells us, the writers, that we also have to prepare special publications. The way we publish for young people must be different to how we publish for the ordinary reader. It isn't that young people are not ordinary readers, but young people read in shots, that, and therefore we have to find a way to give them the that, to entice them and to encourage them to read. We also have to understand that the young people aren't going to go out and buy the book, but they certainly would read the book if it is made available to them on Kindle or something like that. And so just as the world has changed and just as the world has become more violent, we have got to recognize that Trinidad is no different, and we've got to understand, not accept, but understand what corrective measures must be taken and how do we apply these corrective measures. I see the point about getting younger people to read as being a reason to do some serious evaluation and to, as it were, to do serious planning on how do I reach those people. And some people are doing it. There's a young lady, and her name fails me now. She has done a beautiful book on waterfalls of Trinidad and Tobago. And she has been promoting that book and selling it to the reader online, and the snippets and how she presents it. And when she's doing her own book presentations at a mall, whether it's C3 Mall in San Fernando, she promotes it. And I thought I had nothing but admiration. I have nothing but admiration, I have nothing but admiration for the way she continues to try and promote her book.
So George, I mean, we're also running out of time, but I just want to quickly get your perspective on this matter in terms of our literacy among our young people, even while we're seeing more of our local authors coming forth.
Well, the Tobago Writers Guild literally has dozens of published writers, right? Whether they published work is as newspaper articles, books, whatever, we have dozens. And we have our publishing house also. So as you could imagine, we spend a lot of time thinking about how to get Tobagonians in particular to read more. And so we do a lot of social exercises, social science exercises, one of which was done right here in this building here in the Port Mall, whereby we read to persons and had persons read to us right here, random persons in the Tobago space. And we discovered that everybody greatly enjoyed it. And that's why I'm also looking forward to this event on Thursday in the library at 6:30, because part of what is going to happen at this book launch is that we're going to have the panelists actually reading parts of the book. And so we're going to have a discussion that's going to take place. Questions are going to be asked and answered in the space. And I think that discussion is so important. You know, Tobago produced as Mr. Leasing pointed out, when you look at the proportion, we're only 5% of the population, yet still we produce 2 prime ministers out of 7 and 1 president out of 7. And as Assemblyman Sonny Craig jokingly said recently, we might even be producing the next Port of Spain mayor very soon. And so what that says to me is that Tobago produces leadership, right? And that if we're producing leadership, that means we're producing perspective. And I think coming out of this book launch that is going to be happening Thursday, I know I keep repeating the date, the time,
Yes.
etc.,
No,
because that's my job as public relations officer. Thursday in the Scarborough Library and Mitchell Gift Auditorium, 6:30. I know for a fact that a conversation is going to come out of it that is really going to be revolutionary in the way we look at the entire clergy, the whole world of clergy in all different creeds.
And we are certainly looking forward to it, especially Mr. Lisa, you will be in Tobago for that day and you would be sharing yourself from your book.
Well, I am looking forward to this. In fact, I remember calling a very good friend of mine in Tobago. I didn't discuss it with her, so I wouldn't call her name. And I said, listen, I want to get onto the Tobago's Guild. And she said, what you want? I said, I want to talk to them about introducing closer to the church, to the Tobago community. And that is how it started. But I'll say this to you, and I say it without fear of contradiction. I have had to communicate with Miss Joel Green George over the last month or 2 or 3 on this matter, and I couldn't get a more professional person to communicate with. I think Miss Green is a credit to the Tobago community, and I certainly look forward to continuing to work with her as the years progress.
All right. I want to thank you both, Mr. George, Mr. Lee Singh. And viewers, you need to be at the Scarborough Library on Thursday, 6:30 for the book launch of Closer to the Church by Mr. Louis Lee Singh. And yes, and he has it up there. Go be there, make a purchase. Would there be other books also on sale?
Yes.
From Tobago?
From Tobago.
Yes.
All the other books, this is the only book that's going to be from a Trinidad author. All the other books that are going to be available there would be from Tobago writers. But of course, we're focusing specifically because this is the book launch for Mr. Louis Lee Singh's Closer to the Church.
Some exciting time. So viewers,
let me just add it. I'm also bringing to introduce to Tobagonians to Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People, and I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, which will be the first, second, and then this is the third book.
All right, there you go, viewers. I am certainly excited about it. So hopefully you all are too, and you need to see that library auditorium packed out for this. Let's embrace our local authors. And, Mr. Lee Singh, he has some good things for us here in Tobago. So thank you, Mr. George. Thank you, Mr. Lee Singh, for being with us. Happy World Press Freedom to you both and to the public of Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean. Thank you all for viewing, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Good morning, Tobago. Wake up with Candace and Denasia.
Let's go. It's a brand new morning. Rise up to a brand new dawning as the passion starts.